So, without further ado, I am honored to introduce our speakers for today. You will be hearing from a panel of our international leaders in both design and strategy, and they will be speaking to a question on everyone's mind. Why do offices still matter? They are going to take you through a journey of new design concepts, answering the biggest questions about the next evolution of work, while highlighting the opportunities of our new reality. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Nabil Sabet, Group Director of North America. Nabil has worked with clients around the world on millions of square feet of projects from Shanghai to San Francisco. From New York, we have Associate Director of Design, Charlton Hutton. Charlton has a track record of creating award-winning design inspired by innovative workplace concepts. And joining us all the way from London is Senior Associate of Design, Jenny Dirksen. Working in partnership with her clients, she fuses the opportunities of each space with a company's culture and values, leading design teams from high-level master planning down to differentiating details. And joining us from San Francisco, we have Associate Workplace Strategist Morgan Flannery. Having entered the field with the goal of improving the environments where we live and work, Morgan's focus is on user experience. Morgan uses the initial discovery process to identify the unique characteristics of companies and their people and how this impacts the workplace. Also joining us from London is Director of Europe, Charlie Millard. Charlie leads our European teams. His interests are in how our industry can be smarter and more responsive, approaching challenges with integrated, results-oriented teams. I'd like to thank all of you for joining me today and sharing your wisdom. Now, I know our audience is very eager to hear what you have to say, so I'm going to pass it over to Nabil to set the context for us. Take it away, Nabil.
Thanks, Danielle. It's hard not to consider recent global events and their profound implications as we think about what role the offices will play in the future. And prior to 2020, many companies understood the need to evolve their work environments and really better align the business and human needs to create great work outcomes. But this process was extremely gradual and things moved slowly and often with really small and incremental improvements. The speed of change and transformation was greatly throttled by the time needed for behavioral and organizational change. And the past 5 to 6 months have really pushed almost every one of us to overcome barriers, to embrace change and find ways to thrive in these unsettled times. And from organizational structures, workflows, and habits to really new perspectives and ways of interacting, we have transformed in ways that can't be undone. And collectively, there's been new skills gained that will have profound impact on the future of work. And while we've gained or enhanced our abilities to execute portions of our work remotely, and as we live and push through this rapid evolution, we have also quickly realized that there are aspects of our jobs and our lives that we can't do from a distance. Whether it's coming together with colleagues to brainstorm on new ideas or uniting our voices and efforts to advance not only our work, but even have social impact, the power of human collective is more critical now than ever before. And all of this is really important. This is where we see the opportunity for a great elevation of the purpose of work environments or even offices, and our dependency to do parts of our work together adds clarity to the real primary roles of the office and this communal space for employees. So today we're going to talk just about that. We're going to talk about the next big evolution to offices. Moving into the future, offices aren't going away. Rather, the role of offices are becoming much more specific and focused on activities that cannot be done by an individual in a silo or in a remote location. We're talking about what was once in a place for tactical and some collaborative work, really taking that to the next level. The new workplace is really going to be defined by integrative work and is going to be centered on the power of a collective. bringing people together to inspire socialization and a deep understanding of one another so that they can do their life's best work. So the future of office is going to include environments that foster innovation, places that motivate, and really the ability to be resilient through the times. And based on that, this webinar will answer the following. What are the design practices that foster innovation in the workplace? How do we motivate through design and space? What factors need to be considered for resilience? And how do we make it real?
Awesome. Thank you, Nabil. I am so excited to dive into this with you and our speakers today. Now, turning it over to Charlton and our first topic, how does coming together in an office drive business performance?
Thanks, Danielle. People have proven yet again how adaptive they can be, particularly in times of hardship. And a lot of companies have realized their employees can work from home remotely and productively. But I believe these long-term effects on spurring innovation is really going to suffer without the human connection. When looking at what goes in innovation and collaboration and the role of what the office serves, we really have to start by looking at what the construct is. We need to look at the percentages of collaborative work versus independent work. As you see in this chart below, there's a marker of around 70% for independent work is pretty common. When we're looking at the new normal for the future, we see it closer to 30 to 40%. Regarding collaborative work, there's a lot of tools that enable us to work virtually, and that's great, but nothing really beats face-to-face interactions. There's a lot of cues that we miss in nonverbal communications and the ability for someone to immerse themselves in a company culture and brand, and those spontaneous interactions between colleagues when they're in an office. Another factor of looking at the future workplace is this proportionality of people that are going to be working from home versus working in the office full time, or this hybrid of both. So we created this chart, and it's really a percentage breakdown of how we see the work being done in the future. Of course, these percentages will vary between different organizations and even within their own departments, but we pull this assumption together based on a lot of data we've been able to pull across many global organizations we're working with. So based on these assumptions, we actually created this conceptual floor plan to really illustrate how we believe the workplace will evolve. As you can see, highlighted in the blue is this area of collaboration, and highlighted in the green is an area of individual work, and you can see the ratio of where we see the workplace moving. The idea is to create an environment that's versatile and intuitive and really provide the users the freedom to choose how they want to work and when they want to work, and really seamlessly kind of transition through each of the space types based on their needs. It was also important to design with modularity and scalability in mind, to address different client needs and, their business units and work styles. So if you look at the center of the plan, we first started with this element that really anchored the space. It's a communal zone where, people gather to socialize and collaborate. The space is really kind of the epicenter of the initial brainstorms where ideas originate and an objective is typically defined. It also could serve as, a cafe where people break bread and connect. The surrounding area highlighted is really a group of different types of individual spaces and kind of team group oriented spaces, and allows people to do heads down work, team meetings, and cross-pollinate between groups.
Great. Thank you so much, Charlton. With that in mind, what are the key design practices that foster innovation within the workplace?
We have found that absolute mobility and a changing environment is really key when fostering innovation. In New York, in our office, we really tried to dedicate providing choice to the user. We asked a lot of questions and tried to provide solutions to those questions, looking at how do people need to work today? How do they want to do group work? What kind of tools are they going to need? We designed our office as a living lab, or we've been saying a permanent beta, where everything's flexible. The desks are on casters. There's no tethering to power sources. We've actually used mobile battery packs to plug into laptops and monitors as the power source. We've taken pride in really making sure that Office is continually changing, so we can test out different types of technology and furniture solutions that make sense for us and our clients along the way. Even today, we were able to move all those furniture solutions around to create a new re-entry plan with very limited cost to really bring our people back into the office. Since we don't have to overhaul fixed elements and infrastructure, we're really able to create a space very quickly and adapt to this temporary phase to the COVID response. We've really been challenging ourselves internally to think outside the box of what a workplace means to us. We've been focusing on designing for behaviors and spaces that support the way companies actually need to work. We came back to a concept we presented to a client last year, which I feel actually has more merit now. The design we presented was centered around a concept of this series of flexible zones, which incorporated different levels of analog and digital technology. And as you can see in this plan, it's broken up into a no-tech, a low-tech, and a high-tech zone with some transition spaces in between. To start, the no-tech zone is simply an environment for focus and independent work. Just imagine a library setting. It's a place for people to think, to quietly work out a problem individually without distractions. This is not to say there's no technology in the space, but rather it's not visible. It's more immersive and supportive. Should a group come into the no-tech zone, for example, and start talking loudly or gather as a meeting space, there could be smart building technology within that space that could respond to the users by maybe creating a warm amber light, informing the group that this is not the environment for collaboration. As you transition into the low-tech zone, it's really a makerspace focused on analog technology. Flexible furniture, lots of writable walls, pinnable boards. The focus is really on malleability. This is the environment we see a lot of innovation really happening. It's a blank canvas where people are able to not only choose how the space should be on any given day, but it's a continual shift to respond to their needs at that time. The high-tech zone, really provides the team with the type of technologies that you typically wouldn't get at home. Large digital screens, high-end voice and touch technology, virtual meeting configurations, Wi-Fi speeds that are really fast, probably that you're not getting in your house. So this is the kind of technology, along with the low-tech zone, that we see inspires innovation and allows us to work together to create new solutions and ideas.
I really like this example, Charlton, and wonder if this concept is even more relevant now. The idea of enabling choice through what some of our clients are finding is newfound agility. We did something similar for a fintech client by immersing ourselves in understanding the user behavior profiles and clarifying it through a stakeholder journey. The result was an adaptable, flexible, amphitheater-shaped space supported with periphery lounges, booths, meeting rooms, and huddle spaces. Set up day to day, it typically takes the shape of a semicircle with tiered seats on casters. It has a platform for presenting. They've also hosted TED Talk style formats with the AV wall as a backdrop. We designed the services and infrastructure in the ceiling, similar to our New York office, and it allows for seamless movement and constant adaptation of the space. It's also created this dynamic zone for housing internal workshops as well as global events. It makes use of layered acoustic curtains and writable, movable walls, which close off the space, and they can equally create smaller breakouts by moving around the tiered seats. Each of these tools allow the teams to set up the space in any number of ways and focus on how they want to use the space to support them, unhindered and untethered to a specific layout.
So, Jenny, what does that do for a team of people working on a problem?
I think what it does by allowing this freedom of choice in how to set up the space is it really inspires a sense of curiosity through customization and allows the end user to create that space themselves.
Right. Okay, yeah, I can totally see that. And can you speak more to how that benefits us within the current business climate?
I think we're really lucky as designers. Our job is to be creative and to come up with those creative solutions within the workplace. But I think now more than ever, we have the opportunity to almost hand that creative toolbox over as a workplace or as an environment to our clients and the people who are going to be using that space, and really allowing them to take it, use it, customize it, and be innovative within that space. It kind of reminds me of the universal machine at the gym, how you have multiple settings and uses within a really small footprint, and being able to have so many different uses within that one machine. And I kind of see our workplace being used in a similar analogy.
Jenny, I actually really like your reference or analogy to the universal machine.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I think that can be scalable. When you said that, I instantly thought of a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
But I think that could be applied to a room. How could the room adjust for team collaboration, but also at an individual work point that can easily move, shift, adjust per someone's personal preferences in the way they're working.
Definitely. Oh, I really like that. I can actually picture the Swiss Army knife and almost taking what are those most important elements of a workspace and kind of creating this larger space that you can also be working collaboratively with others, but you have those tools. It's almost like a little mini workshop at a workstation.
The thing I think that's important is designing a space, looking at it from a macro to a micro perspective, and designing a space that's scalable at both a entire footprint of a space, but also down to an individual work setting. How can both the overall environment be versatile enough for end users to be able to adapt and shift as their needs change, but also how can you create a individual setting that gives everything to the individual within arm's reach, so they can focus on the task at hand and have everything available around them.
You had mentioned the Swiss Army knife before, and it just conjured up these ideas of how we could create this workspace, but equally on a slightly smaller scale, like you were talking about, this workstation where you do have everything within arm's reach, and maybe that changes depending on the tool that you need at them in the moment.
Yeah, agreed. And what's interesting is, although we want to promote mobility and provide a user to be able to easily and seamlessly transition through different spaces, there's something that's very powerful and intuitive and easy about creating this universal machine at an individual scale. This idea of a Swiss Army knife, whereas an individual sits down, they can access, other people virtually, or be able to do heads down work, and just provide different work settings without actually getting up. It's an interesting concept.
Mm-hmm. Or even rotating within, at different times with different people, you kind of like rotate within this smaller footprint.
I love that, Jenny, and I really appreciate the analogies that you and Charlton have both used, because they bring your ideas to life, and I can actually see how we've done that in some of our workspaces already and how we can improve upon that in the new workspaces we're creating. So I'd like to ask another question, actually. So now, looking beyond the configuration of space and furniture, which we've discussed here, how do different experiences shape our ability to think creatively?
We always talk about choice, and oftentimes we relate that to like different furniture settings or things that different space you can go into. But the concept here was different ambient environments. Maybe it surrounds materiality or lighting, and it's vastly different from one space to the next. So people have the ability to go in and choose what type of environment. It spurs different types of ideas and thoughts and innovation. Like, it's just, if you go into an all red room, that's a much different type of environment than going into something that's very natural and green. And maybe you choose to go into a certain space to spur different types of ways of thinking.
I think what you're describing here is also critical for creating environments that really promote innovation. And really, I think at this point, we can look at the key takeaways from what Charlton and Jenny have been sharing and listing through, first creating environments that have absolute mobility. These environments need to consider down to the detail the experience both inside and outside the office. Having spaces that have varying technologies in those spaces that allow the behavior needed to execute the task on hand. The flexibility and adaptability of space to be able to team together when needed and also split apart when needing to focus. Having multifunctional spaces that really have a kit of parts that you're able to then utilize the space the way you need at that moment. And finally, creating unique and contrasting experiences that help us bring us out of our mental pattern and spark new ideas.
Awesome. Thank you, Nabil. Now, moving on to our next section, focusing on motivation. Jenny and Morgan, I would like to turn this question to you both. How do we motivate through design and space?
Thanks, Danielle. Motivation starts with the individual feeling psychologically safe and stems from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Employees need to feel secure in thinking big and being supported to learn through potential failures. Trust enables a culture of experimentation and builds the foundation to fail without being a failure. Regardless of the values painted on the wall of your office, trust and transparency are felt within the environment of the workplace itself. We've seen the rise of residential spaces within the office, catering to our desire for that feeling of home. And now there is an immediate opportunity for our offices to move away from this residential trend while becoming even more human-centric and looking to nature for solutions.
I wonder, how might the landscape of the office change if trends do move away from homification then?
Designing the landscape of the office may involve jungle-inspired gardens or cave-like spaces for quiet working because our environment affects our emotions and behavior. Where you sit can be the difference between being approached by a social colleague in the canteen or tucking yourself away to focus on a deadline in a quiet room. Employees require spaces to retreat and equally to share. Unlike the traditional boardroom, Coliseum-shaped spaces decrease hierarchy, they promote collaboration, and they encourage the presenting of progress. Our environments have the power of protection or can leave you exposed and feeling vulnerable. Privacy can be attained both visually in where we work and equally through acoustics, which play a strong part in not being overheard or similarly not being distracted. For some, they may welcome social distraction and see the workplace as a social space to catch up with friends. And for some, this may be even more crucial due to COVID. Heading into the office provides shared access to the entire team. You're no longer siloed to your project team or department. For leadership, it allows you to interact with employees within an equitable environment. And for individuals, it affords connection to leadership through approachability in the open plan, which may otherwise not take place at home. Over 70% of our global team is looking forward to getting back into the office, whether this be for face-to-face interactions, the office atmosphere, or shared amenities in social settings. These shared spaces and face-to-face interactions drive innovation through knowledge sharing and building trust through regular interaction. Interestingly, diversity is the most important driver for creating innovative environments. Diversity is what collects life experiences and perspectives and drives expansive thinking to build a culture of resilience. When working remotely, it's hard to get that same team dynamic because we crave human connection. We've seen this with one of our clients who wanted a space to nurture and grow their culture, which regularly changes based on acquiring companies. We created a defined space for the company to gather and to nurture the culture and share learnings within an informal space. With a variety of settings and furniture heights, a distinctly different floor finish, and exposed ceilings with warm, exposed bulbs, the space immediately encourages interaction through comfort.
So Jenny, sorry to interrupt here, but how do you think the future office can motivate and inspire us after we've been working from home for the last 3 months?
As our teams grow stronger and more comfortable, we build each other up and feel a connection to something bigger than yourself. This collective is ingrained in us from a tribe mentality, and when you fit, you can feel it.
I totally agree, Jenny. And that tribe mentality comes from colleagues kind of uniting in a shared goal. And the office can serve as that physical reminder that you're part of that something bigger. As Nabil kind of mentioned earlier, one of the reasons people may want to return to the office is to be surrounded by that company culture and to be immersed in the space and tools and social fabric. And as many of us have experienced during this time, there's not yet a way to fully replicate these experiences in a digital space. You can't see this in a Zoom call when everyone is divided by black lines on a screen and we're all in our individual homes. So office spaces and settings can encourage desired behaviors that are important to your company culture. Jenny, even your example of kind of round meeting spaces in that fintech company you described earlier, which serves as an equalizer for meeting participants, or maybe it's done by kind of centralizing or having forward-facing collaborative and social spaces that emphasize the importance of interpersonal connections and create a comfort to have, those casual conversations that build trust across an organization.
That's really great, Morgan. So why is culture such an important factor in offices now? And why will it stay relevant in the future?
Culture at its root is influenced by an organization's mission, and it's why people are drawn to a company in the first place. It will be even more important for the future office to be a strong physical manifestation of that. We can use the office as a tool to reinforce culture and reconnect employees to their organization's mission, which inspires and unites them in their motivations at work. And this is, I think, ultimately about designing for a sense of purpose and knowing that why people work determines how well they work. That may mean creating reminders for employees of the company mission and their personal impact on that mission and the people that they serve or that use their product. Sometimes this feedback comes in the form of surveys or hard data that can kind of hide the human element and hide this element that people really connect with more. We might manifest this in the office in the form of dashboards for more business units within an organization that show qualitative feedback and maybe celebrate the successes of their employees. This might also be, for a meal delivery service, a digital wall of names of customers or their drivers. And this could be a wall that features impactful client stories. And this is something that can reach, the drivers through marketing, customer service, and every one of these groups can see what's trending and what they need to work on by perhaps seeing real-time comments on their service.
That's awesome, Morgan. Those are great suggestions. Now, I've also heard you speak about autonomy as it relates to motivation. So I was hoping you can share a bit with us today on how that comes to fruition.
By creating a wide range of spaces to recognize and support a spectrum of body types and abilities and genders, you're signaling to employees that you recognize they have different personal and work needs. You're giving people the option to choose spaces that suit them and enable them to do their best work while influencing the performance of the behaviors that are desired to achieve business goals. And this control through choice and variety gives people a sense of autonomy, which can be incredibly motivating. And I think we can signal different behaviors through the use of high tables, which kind of gives a sense of approachability and influences maybe high-level thinking, or semi-enclosed spaces that signal a freedom to speak openly and can impact ideating. Or maybe like Charlton's example earlier, there's a no-tech zone where cell phones are purposely removed for focus. And it's important to note that the success with providing choice and variety is not just through having a mix match of furniture types that look cool, but are actually designed to actually nudge staff behavior. And it's not about what looks cool. It's about how do I naturally respond and behave in this new work setting.
Great. So I actually really want to ask you here, how does flexibility play a role in motivation and innovation?
An additional layer to consider when designing for choice and variety, one which, Jenny, you touched on earlier with your fintech project, is that of flexibility or adaptability in space and its ability to break inertia or break people out of kind of working based on routine or working just based on habit. And the office plays a significant role in feeding or fighting inertia. If it's an environment that remains stagnant or where employees have no choice in when or how to change the office spaces or settings, this can send a subconscious message to employees that it's okay to carry on with the status quo and get stuck in one way of thinking. And you can see this really in traditional office design, pretty much from its inception all the way through to the 90s, in its kind of monotony and immobility and what that bred in office culture. Conversely, an office space that has choice and malleability planned in would have settings that continuously evolve and provide a variety of environments all within the same footprint. And this malleability breaks people out of inertia, counteracting this effect that can be really detrimental to motivation. In one project, we created a movable room that could actually be pushed through a garage door on the side of a building to actually hold meetings outside. In another area, we combined overhead power drops with a wide variety of standing height work tables, desks, modular sofas, movable walls, and other settings that could be easily kind of moved and rearranged within a couple days or even less than a couple hours in an open area of the floor plan. And this allowed employees to create a variety of settings and even test new and different work settings. And it established a positive culture around having an experimentation mindset. Ultimately, flexibility and adaptability are about choice and giving people a sense of control through the ability to change their environment and create their own novel experiences.
Great points, Morgan. And as most of us are still working from home, I'm sure we are all at some point craving further choices beyond a dining room table, a sofa, or an ironing board. It's a good reminder that we crave new environments and sensory experiences, as well as novel stimuli. There is a need to step into a new and different environment within the office. So by shaping the space and allowing for choice, we can heighten the user experience through unique, immersive, and awe-inspiring moments. For one client, they regularly surprise employees by repainting a large-scale mural in their canteen, which happens to be at the front door for all to see when you enter the space. Creating moments of awe and wonderment in the office inspires us to think expansively and experience through participation, like our pencil wall in the London office, where the whole team helped to create it. It's for this reason that I love the S.C. Johnson building by Frank Lloyd Wright. Its playful lily pad columns formed a biomimetic space that he designed to be as inspiring a place to work in as any cathedral ever was to worship in.
So I know this may seem like a very obvious question, but I want to pose it anyways. Why do spaces need to inspire us?
Inspiring spaces automatically encourage a sense of discovery and play. We can encourage play through ticker tape company updates on cafe monitors, interactive portals encouraging exploration, and even transition spaces which elevate the common corridor. With Sense of Play, it's about the journey and also about the destination. By integrating playful elements into our spaces, we make the everyday moments more memorable and experiential. Allowing users to make it unique to them through hackability supports the cultural push to bring your authentic self to the office. The workplace as a workshop combines the social aspect of a coffee shop, the collaborative nature of colleagues in a huddle, and the space in which to perform your best work. A workshop allows you to customize through creativity and innovative experimentation to arrive at future-forward solutions. As we touched on in the innovation section, and I think for some companies, these maker spaces are the norm, and for others, the office can now provide that space. The goal is for the workplace itself to be fun, exciting, and create a sense of curiosity. We see the workplace as a tool in your employee toolbox, providing support, culture, choice, and ultimately a sense of play, motivating you to do your best work.
Jenny, Morgan, this is awesome. Thank you so much. So really, let's just break it down to some key takeaways. The workplace here can act as a business resource. And as a business resource and a tool that motivates people, teams, and organizations, we can create an environment that supports psychological safety, that elicits a sense of purpose, that provides choice and variety through all kinds of various settings, can empower with flexibility and adaptability, and have that under the control of individuals, and really ensure a sense of play throughout the entire environment.
With all of that in mind, I'd like to now turn to Charlie to discuss planning your real estate for future resiliency. So Charlie, I have a few questions for you here. As business leaders, what factors need to be considered for resilience? What are the future opportunities of our office spaces? And what are the workplace manifestations that allow for resilience?
Thanks, Danielle. So by resilience, we really mean an ability and an appetite to deal with change. Nearly all our client businesses and our workplace projects are experiencing transformational change anyway. So we need to look at the impact of change really across three areas: the physical, the digital, and the social environments. In the terms of the physical environment, it must provide a safe and healthy environment, mentally and physically, to deal with change. A lot of thought has gone into creating a sense of belonging in the physical environment in recent years. Architects and designers have designed neighborhoods and designed for comfort, ergonomics, acoustics, visual interest, and biophilia. But there's a couple of areas where we believe this needs more focus, and perhaps this has been brought home by COVID. Firstly is air quality. There's a focus on efficiency metrics that's quite damaging. We talk about 12 litres per second per person, we talk about the minimum fresh air per person and the minimum square foot per person, but we don't actually talk about what is optimal. The Harvard Business Review published a study by Harvard University, their cognitive FX team, from March 2017, led by a guy called Joseph Allen. And they conducted an experiment where they doubled ventilation rate and lowered the VOCs in a controlled environment over a week. And at the end of each day, the participants were given cognitive tests, and they demonstrated significant improvement, especially in strategic decision making. Looking at the cost of this, they estimated the cost was about $40 per person to double the fresh air volume in that study. But the estimated productivity improvement and the return was about $7,000 per person per year. So quite a seismic change in the value from that adaptation. And we've taken this very seriously in our own office. So we've introduced CO2 meters and specified very low VOCs in our own office, to the extent that we were accredited by Reset Air, as the first commercial office building in Europe to meet their standards. And of course, the other benefit, incidentally, in this current time, is that better ventilation greatly lowers infectious disease transmission as well. The other area in the physical environment where I think we can design for better resilience is how the physical environment supports mental well-being. And offices provide great intellectual and social nourishment. Working from home is quite stressful and can be ergonomically and socially unsuitable for long periods. And in our Asian offices, which have pandemic head start on the US and the UK, very few people elect to work from home, as the office provides them a better environment. Secondly, beyond the physical environment is the digital environment and effective technology. And the office needs to provide more capacity and avoid the disappointing latency in so many systems. We must be able to get more from the same real estate. We want technology to change the performance of what we've got and the utility and the experience of a space. Control of the environment is increasingly important for our own well-being, whether that's direct control, so as simple as turning on a light or controlling something with our mobile phone, or whether it's smart control, which is self-monitoring. So that could be, for example, the CO2 meters I talked about, or circadian lighting, or any pre-programmed settings based on presence detection. So established technologies are looking for new control interfaces, and interestingly, control interfaces like our mobile phone are looking to drive new technologies. So it's a really interesting area which architects and designers need to think about to create resilient environments. And then the third pillar is the social environment and creating resiliency. And offices have a huge role to play in this. Charlton mentioned the need for human connection for work. Inversely to that, the challenge with home working is that this can lead to disaggregation. Everyone is communicating daily with their immediate team, but there can be organizational blindness beyond that immediate network. And the office manages to aggregate and laminate individual team cultures together into an overarching culture and mission that Morgan talked about. The set of behaviors that are expressed repeatedly and visibly. Office also creates inclusion and opportunity. It provides a flatter platform for co-working and co-creation. Seeing people encourages you to include them. More linear communication models like video conference provide less casual opportunity for inclusion. And those are really the three key areas I see that need to be considered for resilience in the future office.
Awesome, Charlie. That was great. So now what are the future opportunities for office spaces?
So we at Moser see the opportunities and trends in the future office as following the general trends in work and what employees want from their workplace and their employer. The real estate strategy will potentially play a bigger role in attracting talent and supporting leadership goals. So starting maybe with locational flexibility, whether you run a hub and spoke model or a matrix type model, effective and desirable work locations need to be in proximity to your people. We've heard many arguments for and against working from home, but one thing I'm yet to hear is anyone missing their commute time. So some things will be top down in terms of strategy and some will be bottom up in terms of staff engagement and really understanding how people live at home and what they need to work effectively. Second thing, I think, in terms of the opportunities to consider your lease flexibility. There are different commercial models, mixing maybe fixed lease, flex lease, and membership type arrangements. And potentially out of this, employers will need to reconsider their cake mix. People are already engaging in these different models, but is the future cake mix the same as the cake mix you've got right now? Then also, there's an opportunity for the office to become a real destination and experience. We've talked about this elsewhere in the webinar, but I think it's important opportunity to remind people of the mission and culture of the firm and to demonstrate that authenticity in that culture. And there's a real need to make stuff visible. With the remote people, with the remote work and remote information, there needs to be a reason to be there. And so there's an opportunity, therefore, for the office to be a real performance hub. We can measure the person, not the input, as per my example of the fresh air experiment at Harvard. And then lastly, and maybe really importantly, in a future distributed work model, I think there's the opportunity for the office to provide accessibility. Physical accessibility has been much discussed in the light of designing for diversity, but maybe digital accessibility, are we all getting access to the same information when we work from home as to when we work in the office? And then perhaps most importantly, social accessibility. Is your individual contribution noticed properly when home working? Can the office create inclusion and access to more opportunity? And clients and designers need to think about the office landscape in terms of the experience. Do I feel included and involved? And do I have access to people? So therefore, I'm part of the solution. And I think this is a big challenge for people working from home.
Wow, incredible, Charlie. You've shared extremely valuable information here. Thank you so much.
And so, rounding this section out, to increase resiliency of our workspaces, we need to undertake several physical, social, and digital changes. And when we're able to marry this with a deeper understanding and consideration of the organizational structure, the new usage of the space, and even the operating models, it is then that we can benefit from both an advanced workplace and even potential financial benefit.
So, Nabil, keeping in mind everything we've discussed today, my question for you is, as leaders, How do we make this all real?
As we look to support our clients in rethinking future workplaces all across our portfolios, we see that the effect of what we're talking about right now here today has potentially massive ramifications. Considering a blended workplace, one where aspects of work from home is a feasible part of the work week and is combined with time together in the office, the size, the footprint, the future functionalities of the office, they all need to be reconsidered. And as we've been working with our clients, this is magnified when looking on how this projects across the entire portfolio and really requires us to strategize regardless of whether it's a consolidation, a distribution, or even repurposing of a facility. And so to illustrate with a little more detail, we wanted to share a project example for a small team in downtown San Francisco. This is a small case study with numbers that are very specific to this location, and particularly to this building. And so we totally respect that each region and different building, the numbers will look slightly different, but still we thought it was good to go through the logic of this particular case. And so just jumping into some numbers here, as you can see, it's a very small team, 45 people, around 8,400 square feet. This 8,400 square feet is made up of workplace that includes the regular amenities, cafe areas, and meeting rooms and so on, that approximately work out to around 169 square feet per person, and an additional space of around 800 square feet for Samples Library. And the total rent on this particular space is $60,000 a month, which works out to around $1,300 per person per month. And it's kind of interesting to look at the math as it relates to per person, as we look at workplace as potentially having more effect than just the people who are in the space at that given moment. It could potentially have an effect on a larger headcount or larger number of staff. So we then look at the next level. So we're now looking at the traditional versus progressive workplace kind of metrics. And so in a traditional office, these are average numbers, around 140 square foot per person. And if it's really traditional, you have potentially just two different work settings. So you have a workstation and workstation or desk, and you have the meeting room or conference area. So really just two types of work settings. Whereas we look at the progressive office, and more progressive offices with more amenities and bells and whistles go upwards of 150 to 160 square foot per person. And in these settings, the employee can enjoy up to 6 different work settings. So you have the workstation and desk, you have lounge areas, cafe, high bench areas, meeting areas, phone booths, and so on. And so you can see that in the progressive office design, obviously there's more given back to the employee, more choice settings that they can use. And so we use that to even look one step further. What is this blended workplace and how is it significant? And really, we're looking at, holding some of the same workplace settings as a progressive office and in the order of 160 square foot per person, but now introducing the 7th workplace setting, which would be the home office. So the workplace setting here would be, desks and workstations, lounge areas, cafe, high bench areas, meeting rooms, phone rooms, booths, and home office areas. And so that's very interesting. We look at these, 3 very high level comparison with the 3 different office types. And so now looking one layer deeper, looking at the occupancy of space, and really before COVID, this is an average number based on survey results that we had executed a while ago. The average occupancy before COVID was around 70% in the office space. And so 70% is a dramatic, number. It's much lower than 100, of course, but it's not low enough to justify, a real overhaul of your workplace, a real downsizing of space. But what we're seeing through our research and looking at how the survey results coming back and how people are actually performing their work in a work from home setting, the projected blended workforce, the blended workplace where it's comprised of working from home and in the office, we're looking at an occupancy of around 45%. And that's really significant. An occupancy of 45% is now large enough to really start reconsidering things. And so we're going to remember that as we move forward in our little analysis here. And so now we're looking at, what does a new workplace look like? And in this slide, we're aiming for the blended workplace environment. And so 160 square feet per person from the previous slide you saw, and then 7 work settings and all those work setting types and the same headcount. And what we see is a dramatic reduction in the rentable area. So obviously the workplace itself is shrunken down. We still maintain that special requirement area, and we have around 4,400 square feet now. And so what happens when we now, use some of the numbers to kind of project there? And so what we've seen is with the TI provided by the landlord here, we've, negotiated a $90 a square foot with the broker and the client, and the landlord will be paying that portion. The additional fit out budget of around $40 borne by the tenant, an additional ITAV of $45, really bringing our fit out cost to almost $375,000, and then having the ability to go back and actually add and create that 7th work setting, the home office work setting. We've budgeted around $1,500 per person. This is for a sit-stand desk, a simple one, a task chair, maybe a monitor arm if they need. And so what we're seeing is a fixed cost around $441,500 and a reduction in the monthly rent. And what this means is, with all of that considered, even considering the home office, which is a really added perk, we're seeing a payback period of around 15.5 months. And so a really interesting business case to consider. Again, I'm not trying to say that this is the only way of looking at these numbers, but again, it paints a different picture. And if we scale it up across multiple cities, we can see that in a very near future, we can actually have a model that is cash positive, and it provides even more work settings than we had previously thought of. Now, the goal today was not to say that this model is for everyone. Rather, we just wanted to share a case study that demonstrates that if we look at things more holistically, that there may be a chance to make great changes to the way we work and still be able to balance all of that financially.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nabil. So as you've all seen and heard today, our global designers have created the concepts around the future office. These designs will continue to change and shift as we begin to see the lasting impact of the recent events in 2020, and as we help our clients create workplaces that support their most pressing business needs. As we wrap up for today, please submit any questions that you have in the Questions tab now so that we can reach out to you directly after this webinar. And if you didn't get a chance to fill out our 30-second survey at the beginning of this webinar, you will be directed to it right after this webinar ends so that you can do so. We will be combining the results of your responses today with our global survey that was shared in our last webinar. You will receive these results in the next few days. We'd also love to continue this conversation with you, so please follow us on LinkedIn and our other social platforms, and feel free to email us at the contact shown on the screen here. Again, thank you so much to our speakers for giving us a view into what type of office we could be walking into in the near future. And thank you to our amazing audience for your engagement and support. We look forward to connecting with you all soon. Please stay well.